I'll see a lot of them and they're all excited about their ideas and they rush in and they have just done the first thing they thought they needed to do, and sometimes that first thing or something that they just rushed right into and spent a whole bunch of money on was not the right first thing to do. Hey, it's Don Skaggs again with Empowered Inventing, the one place where we try to help you help other people by taking your innovation, the right opportunity, and some sound wisdom and turning them into real things like products and businesses. The ones that help people, and those people give you certificates of appreciation called dollar bills. So anyway, today I want to talk to you just a little bit about something that we call, something we've mentioned in a few videos before, about something that we call our idea steps. And I'll see so many inventors and entrepreneurs, and they'll have a great idea and they'll be all excited. It'll be a business idea. Maybe they're an entrepreneur. Maybe it's not necessarily a product or a gadget. Maybe it's a business idea, or they do have an idea for a gadget or a product, and they're what you'd classically call an inventor, or a new technology, or a new way of doing business. I kind of group all of that into inventors when I say inventors. But anyway, I'll see a lot of them and they're all excited about their ideas and they rush in and they have just done the first thing they thought they needed to do, and sometimes that first thing or something that they just rushed right into and spent a whole bunch of money on was not the right first thing to do. Because there's steps that you need to take, and if you take the steps in the right order, I've seen successful inventors and I've seen inventors that have not been successful, and a lot of times it boils down to the fact that they rushed in and think of it like a washing machine. A washing machine has all of these different cycles. You just kind of hit the button and it starts to fill with water, and then it starts to add the soap, and then it starts to agitate, and then it starts to spin, and then it's rinse and then spin, or I don't really know the order that they're supposed to go in. But what I'm saying is, if you get those cycles out of order, you end up with soapy clothes or clothes that are soaking wet. And it's the same way with ideas. It's the same way with entrepreneurs and inventors, with people who have ideas for products and businesses. So I think that one of the ways that we try to help inventors and entrepreneurs is by giving you a set of steps and putting those steps in the right order. Now, these aren't giant steps. These aren't steps that are supposed to take, a year at a time or anything. No. These are fast iterations that you go through. Very simple steps. Very, if I can borrow from Dave Ramsey, baby steps that you take that are just little steps, and you can say, okay, well, I can get through that one. Let me get to the next one. Well, let me get to this next one then here. And then let me get to this next one. Before you know it, you've made all kinds of progress. And the more you put into your idea, the more you put into your business or your product, your invention, your startup, then the more valuable it becomes, the more quality things that you put in as far as your time, your money, your energy. Now, what are these idea steps, you might be asking? Well, we teach these in a lot of our Empowered Inventing classes. We go through them, but the first step and a lot of people think, the first thing I need to do is rush out and hire an attorney and get a patent. And that's actually way down the road, because there's some steps you need to take to make sure that you're not spending a whole lot of money on something before you know that it's going to make you any money or not. You don't want to just kind of go and just blindly invest in something and have it not make you any money. So it's the same way with ideas. So the first thing that we tell you to do is to pick one. Just pick one idea. And so many inventors and entrepreneurs out there will just have so many ideas. Now, you might be one of those people, you just got the one idea, but I guarantee you, as I've seen with so many inventors and entrepreneurs, that the more you start working on different ideas and the more you start living in that space and thinking in that world, then the more ideas you end up coming up with. They just start sprouting up everywhere. And we're just like furiously writing them all down and putting them all on a file somewhere, knowing we'll never get to all of them. But you've got all these ideas, and so you work on all of them at one time? No, you pick one. Pick one thing that you can focus on, and you have to take the right strategy to pick the right one. Again, these are the things that we teach in a lot of our empowered inventing classes. But you have to pick the right one, and you have to pick it smart. You have to pick it in a way that you're not going to. It's not going to be something that you can't do. It's not going to be fruit that you can't reach. So the first thing you have to do is pick the right idea. The next thing you need to start doing is starting to write it down. And when I say write it down, you're not just writing down the idea and then you're done with it. No, no, no. This is something that goes on, and it just, you keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And throughout the entire life of the product of the business, you just keep writing and adding to this. And it becomes bigger, it becomes more substantive, it becomes something much, much, much more than you would have ever thought in the beginning. But it all starts with immediately starting to write it down, because it prepares you for so many things. It prepares you for the next step, which is the fact that you're going to actually have to build something to prove to yourself that it works. And I would say, well, that's a prototype, but we actually separate prototypes into two different types of prototypes. The first prototype you make is the Frankentype, and that's the next step. You're picking the right idea, you're starting to write it all down, and now you're building a Frankentype. Frankentypes, as you've heard me say so many times before, is where you've snuck out to the graveyard of broken products and spare parts. You've used glue sticks and duct tape, and the result is a prototype that only an inventor could love. This thing's going to be ugly. One of these days I'm going to do an ugly prototype contest. Send me a message, let me know if you're interested in that. I'd love to do one if I had enough people interested in getting involved with it. Who has the ugliest prototype? So anyway, that next step though is this low-cost functional prototype. And you're proving just to one person that it works, and that's you. So you've thought of it, you're saying, oh yeah, I've wrote all this down on paper, and it makes perfect sense to you on paper. But does it make sense in the real world? Can you actually make it work? That's the Frankentype. Now, you've figured that out, so you're working on that, so you've picked one, you've wrote it down, you've Frankentyped it, you've got it working. Now you've got to figure out, how can I make this in quantities? In other words, this is what we call the scalable manufacturing prep, or learning how it can be made. So you want to be sure that you know, can I make one of these, and can I make 10 of these? Can I make 100 of these? Can I make 1,000? Can I make 100,000 of these? And what's it going to cost me to do that? So you have to figure out about what they call manufacturability. Is it something that can be manufactured? Can someone make it for me? How much is that going to cost? You have to know these things. And you have to know these things before you start delving into the next step, which is what we call the demo type. This is the second level of prototype. So you've got that Frankentype, and it's humming, it's working really well, but now it's time to graduate that into what we call the demo type. And that is the prettied up one. That's the one, it's still functional, it works, but it looks a lot better. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be real expensive. A lot of times you can still do these on the cheap, but you can demonstrate it to other people, where they're just not, they're not creeped out saying, that's the ugliest thing I ever saw in the world. No, it actually is presentable and looks pretty. That's the demo type. So you're getting your demo type all ready. Now about that time you move on to the next step, and that is getting ready to sell it. Now you're saying, well, Don, we're not patenting anything yet. No, you're not telling anybody yet. You're just preparing for all these things, and there's a reason for that. Now you're getting ready to sell it, and that's the marketing prep. How am I going to sell it? You've got to figure those things out. How am I going to sell it? Where am I going to sell it? You become familiar with your target marketplace. We talked about that in another video. So now that you've gotten all that together and all that ready, now it's time to look at protecting it. And so you can take all of those things from that other step, all that writing down you've done. Now you've got like a good 500 words. You can do an automated patent search. We sell those, by the way, that you can do, or you can go to an attorney and get a patent search, or you can do one yourself. So you want to search and make sure there's nothing else out there in the marketplace or in the patent database that is like it, so you're not infringing on anybody. You want to be sure about that. But then you want to file the provisional patent. and you can protect it that way. And that is, provisional patents are very different. We'll talk about this in another video about how provisional patent is different than a utility patent and than a full-blown, the big enchilada patent. But it's a good way to get your foot in the door and be able to put patent pending on everything. Because the next step you're going to take, the minute you do that, and you've done all of these other steps beforehand, and you've filed that provisional patent, now you're going to have to learn to sell it. And that's the market validation and the pivots. That's where you're actually, okay, now I'm ready to show it to the world. I've got my demo typed together. I've taken the right preparation. I haven't spent a lot of money, and now I'm ready to see if this thing's going to sell. So you file that provisional patent, and then the next moment you start the whole marketing thing. And then you want to sell it. And once you know where it's supposed to live, how it's supposed to live, how it's supposed to be presented, you've got all of these ducks in a row, you've protected yourself with a provisional patent, now you're out there selling it. And you're either selling it directly, you're selling it through distributors, maybe you're using crowdfunding or licensing. There's lots of different ways to sell it. Of course, again, we teach that. And so then you've taken all of these steps and you've prepared yourself well. And you've gained a lot of wisdom in taking these steps, learning about the process, learning about the product, learning about the market. And you're out there and you're proving that it's working because customers are buying, customers are selling, and that is when you become successful. And that's the next step, that's the last step, and that's probably the most important step, is be successful and then help other people. Go back to your inventors group, your local inventors group that maybe you've been in, and I strongly suggest go to Invent Leader, or it's either Invent Leader or inventleaders.org. It's called the IGA, Inventor Groups of America. We're in there with our inventor groups, and we're all over the country. Get with your local inventor group, but be successful and go back to those groups and help other inventors that are struggling. Help them with these steps. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. This was the overview of the IdeaSteps. I'm Don Skaggs, Empowered Inventing TV. If you're watching me on YouTube, be sure and like, subscribe, help us to build our tribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. So maybe we're already there by the time you've watched this, and that's great too. But anyway, be sure and like and subscribe, and I will look to see you at the next meeting. We do online meetings now, by the way, maybe at one of the next local workshops, or maybe one of our online classes, or at least on the next video.